So they manipulate you. You know that they do. But did you know that there's like these little stealthy things that they do to manipulate you? And one of the things that they do, one of the little known manipulation tactics that they use is what I call faux apologies. It looks like they're apologizing to you, but they're not apologizing to you. They are actually using that as a manipulation strategy. They're actually saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, but it's really a way to future fake you, get you back into their web, get you back into their lair, get you to do what it is that they want you to do, or just to manipulate you back into their web of control." It's not really an apology. It's what I call a faux apology. It's a fake apology. It's definitely a manipulation strategy. Remember, everything they do is a manipulation. When they love bomb you, it's a manipulation. When they apologize to you, it's a manipulation. When they're nice to you, when they are not nice to you, everything they do is a manipulation. So that's number one. Number two is when they ghost you, when they just stop talking to you completely. They've love bombed you, they've gotten you into their web of control. They've said they love you, even if it's a business relationship, and they said, "Oh my God, we're supposed to be working together, we're soulmates, whatever it is." And then all of a sudden you don't hear from them. And then you're like, "Hey, what's going on?" And, we were supposed to be doing all this stuff. You're emailing like 50 times a day, and then suddenly you don't hear from them at all. That's a manipulation strategy. I have a whole video on, if you've ever been ghosted or lied to, watch this. You're definitely going to want to check that out. Number three of the little known manipulation strategies that narcissists use is guilt tripping. This is a big one that covert narcissists use. They guilt trip you, especially when they're like acting like, "Oh, I wish you could have come. It's really, sad that you couldn't make it." That doesn't necessarily seem like a manipulation on the surface sometimes, especially if it's like a family member or somebody that you love or supposed to love you. But it can be a manipulation. And, it's sad to hear that sometimes, but it really can be a manipulation, especially if, they know that it's hard for you, or if it's something that you really, it's a difficult situation. It puts you in a precarious situation, but they're guilt tripping you into it anyway. Then that's definitely a narcissistic manipulation tactic. The next one is flattering you. "Oh, you're so good at this. You're so fantastic," that sort of thing. And they're really just manipulating you into doing something that they know that you don't want to do, that you don't like, or something to that effect, especially if it's really manipulating you into a situation that is maybe toxic for you, or something to that effect. That's really when they use flattery. Maybe it's using a combination of things, using flattery to guilt trip you into something. It's flattery in and of itself may not necessarily be bad, of course. Who doesn't like to get compliments? But it's when they use it to manipulate you into something that's not necessarily something that you want to do, or something that's definitely not good for you. So that's number four. And if you just had enough of their narcissistic manipulation, just put enough in the comments right now. Enough. It's just enough. It's time to stop. It's time to put a stop to it. It's just enough already. All right. So that's number four. So two more. Number five is one of my absolute things. It just absolutely gets under my skin. I just cannot take it. And this is changing the subject to evade accountability. This is one of the things that it's like trying to catch a wave and pin it down. I actually have a whole TikTok video on this, and it's actually a reel on Instagram as well. And it's actually short, I think, here on YouTube as well, where I actually did a whole little conversation on this, where it's really a form of gaslighting, where you're trying to have a conversation with them and you're like, hey, I want to talk to you about those text messages, those suspicious text messages. And they're like, why are you trying to bring that up now? And well, when would be a good time? Oh, you're raising your voice. Oh, I didn't raise my voice. Oh, now you're being just difficult. I wasn't being difficult. It's like you can never get to the subject at hand because they're constantly changing the subject to evade accountability. That is a manipulation strategy. It's a manipulation tactic. All right. So that's number 5. And number 6 is just absolutely going nuclear. They just out of nowhere go from 0 to 100. And you're like, what in the heck is going on? And they do that to create this massive fire over here so that you don't talk about what's going on over here. They just go bat, whatever, crazy, because then you aren't now talking about what's happening over here, right? It's now like this is the news instead of this being the news.
So let's talk about the tactics that narcissists use to manipulate and punish their victims. So the first thing that they do to even be able to be put in a position of being able to manipulate and punish their victims is they love bomb. And I talk a lot more about love bombing in my video on love bombing, so check that out if you want. But really what it is they are extremely charismatic. One of the hallmarks of narcissists is they are very likable to the outside world. They're like the greatest salesman on earth in a lot of ways. They are extremely intelligent. They are masters at reading people. So right from the beginning, they are reading you to see how they can best kind of worm their way into your lives and put themselves in a position to be able to do things like this. Because it's not like they come along being abusive. You would never have gotten into that relationship with them if they just came on that way. They come off seeming perfect for you. And even when you're not in a romantic relationship with these people, maybe it's just a business relationship, they still come off as if they were like a gift from heaven. Like you can't even believe how wonderful this person is. They're if it's in business, they are the perfect business partner for you. They have all the right contacts. They can make all the right introductions. They can put you in incredible places, and you will elevate your career by being with them. So that's that. And then, if it's a romantic relationship, obviously they're perfect for you in every way. They have the perfect job. They take care of you. They say how amazing you are. If you're a guy, you're the most handsome thing they've ever seen, a total Adonis. If you are a woman, then you're the most beautiful woman they've ever seen. They can't believe how perfect you are for them. They've never had another soulmate like this. They've never even been in love before until you came along. I mean, whatever they need to say in order to suck you in to be. And so that's really one of the first ways that they manipulate and punish to start being even in a position to manipulate and punish their victims is that love bomb stage. The next thing that you'll notice, and these are in no particular order at all, but one of the ways that they manipulate and punish their victims is by ghosting them. So now all of a sudden you can't get in touch with them. You know, they've been texting you for days on end, 20,000 times a day. And now when you want to call them out on something, or you want them for something, or you need them for something, now all of a sudden they can't be found. They aren't there. And then when you question them on it, it was, oh, I was busy. How dare you? I'm working, or something like that. Or if you're calling them out on something that, you know, maybe that, you know, you are questioning them on, maybe they're speaking to somebody else that they shouldn't be, they've been particularly flirty or something like that, then, you know, they'll start ghosting you. Like, they'll just totally ignore you. And that's one of the ways that they punish their victims. And if you want to know more about ghosting, check out my 101 series, my Narcissism 101 series. I have tons of videos in there about all the different terminology that you need to know, and ghosting is one of those videos, so we'll make sure that we drop a link to that below as well. Another thing that they will try to do is they will start trying to make you jealous. And, you know, sometimes this is called triangulation. Sometimes they just are lining up flying monkeys to be against you, but they're talking to other people. They're trying to make it seem like they have a better relationship with other people, or these other people are better than you in some way. They're starting to put you down. They're starting this like little subtle devaluing starts. And if you want to know more about devaluing, check out my video on devaluing. But this is where the subtle devaluing starts, where you start to go, gosh, you know, that didn't feel right, that didn't seem right. And a lot of times, especially with covert narcissists, and there's a whole bunch more on this in my video on the covert passive-aggressive narcissists, who are my personal ones that I hate the most, because I've had to deal with them in my own life and fell prey to a couple of them in my own life, which I never will again because I know so much about narcissism now. But you know, one of the things that they do is like these little subtle drip, drip, drip things that are so small that you like, do I even say anything about this? Or maybe I'm making too much of it. Maybe I'm just going crazy. You know, it's oftentimes death by a thousand cuts, where you just think, well, that didn't seem right. Or maybe they are just, you know, talking to this person because they have a work relationship with them, or because they're trying to build a better relationship with our neighbors or our friends. And maybe I am making too much of it. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. Or maybe I'm being overly jealous, or, you know, you start questioning yourself as to whether or not you're kind of blowing it out of proportion, because that's what they'll try to make it seem like you're doing, is blowing it out of proportion. And the next thing that they do to manipulate and punish their victims is gaslighting. And I have a whole video on gaslighting. And this is something that all narcissists do. And they do it, by the way, not just to you, but they kind of gaslight everybody. And that is, it's a huge way that they get along in the world. And that is like, even though you're looking at evidence and you see facts of something, they basically, and you know what conversation you had, they make it seem like that's not what you're seeing, that's not what you're looking at, that's not what you heard, that's not how it went down, you know, you're remembering it wrong, you are taking something out of context, you are, you know, even if you have an email or something. I mean, this is one of the things that happened in my relationship with one of the narcissists I was dealing with. It was, you know, even though I had an email that said, this is what the conversation was, and mine was in a business setting, the person came back and was like, oh, we talked about this and you agreed to blah, blah, blah. And even though the email didn't even say that, but they just will say, well, but that's a conversation that we had, or whatever. You agreed to that. And of course, it's something you would never agree to. But, you start to slowly lose your mind. And that's what happens with gaslighting. You just are starting to slowly lose your mind. And if this is exactly what you have seen in your relationship with the narcissist, I want to see an exactly in the comments. Just give me the word exactly in the comments. And the next thing that they do is they go straight from degrading and insulting you to love bombing you again. And sometimes this is called hoovering. And it's especially, you see this like during the birth of the smear campaign, during the discard phase, whether you're discarding or they're discarding. And sometimes they start this long before the actual discard happens, because they're either expecting you to discard them eventually, or they're expecting to discard you eventually. But they go from this heinous beast of a string of insults and the gaslighting and the intimidation tactics and all of these manipulation tactics that, I talked about, the passive aggressiveness, on and on and on, to, oh, but, we've always been able to get along. We can work this out. Or even if it's, we can come to an agreement, when you're in the middle of a divorce, all of a sudden they become your best friend. All of a sudden things are happening that are completely confusing you. And they do that again to manipulate you, because they want to get you away from your lawyer, or they want to get you away from your therapist, or they want to get you away from whoever it is that they think now has some other form of control over you. And why do they do that? First, yes, of course, they want you to do what they want you to do. But it all comes back to narcissistic supply, which is the holy grail for narcissists. Everything they do is driven by that narcissistic supply. It's like the rat in the maze that's going for that cheese. That's exactly what they're going for all the time. And one of the things I say about narcissists is, even though they are absolutely the most horrible people to deal with on the planet, they are actually very simple to understand. And once you get them, once you figure out that everything that they're doing is to keep as much narcissistic supply as they can possibly get, and you're just part of that scheme and you're part of that manipulation, and if you are in their zone of world and you even could possibly continue to be a source of supply, they're going to keep you around. So when you're going to negotiate with the narcissist, that's one of the things that you need to remember the most, is that everything that they do is driven by narcissistic supply. So this is by no means a comprehensive list of all of the things that they do to manipulate and punish their victims. I mean, certainly in a divorce setting, they do all kinds of things like weaponize the court system, use children as pawns, ignore court orders, ignore requests to produce, not produce financial documents, on and on and on. Intimidation, threats of violence, lying, stalking, all kinds of things I've seen in the divorce cases, which they do even in dissolution of business settings or dissolution of business partner settings. They act the same way that they do in regular life, only on steroids and 1,000 times worse. So what I want to do here is I want to talk specifically in this video about how they do it. I want to break it down for you on how they turn people against you, because one of the things that I thought for the longest time is that these flying monkeys were actually in on it all the time. But I came to realize after a while that they're not always in on it. And
a lot of times they're actually kind of being love bombed and sort of duped by the narcissist too. And by the way, if you're new here, I'm Rebecca Zung. I am an attorney. I'm also a narcissist negotiation expert. I am globally recognized. I have a book, Slay the Bully, How to Negotiate with a Narcissist and Win. And if you're new here, you've come to the right place. Don't forget to subscribe. I'm here to equip you with the tools you need. And we want you to break free because of things like this, because of that bully that they are. And that's why I called my book, Slay the Bully, How to Negotiate with a Narcissist and Win, because of things like this. So the first thing that they do is they kind of define who their flying monkeys are going to be. So they're looking and searching, who's going to be on my side, who's going to be a good target for me to line up for me. So when a narcissist is looking to turn their family and friends against you, they're looking, who's going to be vulnerable, who's going to listen to me, who's going to buy what I'm selling. And they're kind of looking in the same way that they looked for that target in you. You know, who can I charm? Who can I use my charisma on? Who's going to buy my lies? And, you know, by the way, that the term flying monkey comes from the movie. If you know, the people who don't know this, it comes from the movie Wizard of Oz. And it was, you know, that whole it refers to the individuals that were part of the Wicked Witches posse, those creatures that would hang around with the Wizard of Oz and fly around, you know, the kingdom and report back to the Wicked Witch and let her know what was going on. And, you know, also individuals who are sort of unwittingly or intentionally manipulated by the narcissist. You know, they kind of do their little spying for them, right? They're sort of like the foot soldiers in the narcissist army. So how do they do this? How do they manipulate them? You know, I've seen it in a lot of different scenarios, just so you know. So, I mean, and these people can be friends, they can be family members, they can be colleagues, they could be your family members. Seen that? You know, and I've seen it in the oddest of situations, let me tell you. And, you know, they're master manipulators. They use charm, they use guilt tripping, misinformation, and, you know, they turn people into their little pawns. So, you know, and how they do that, you know, it's a variety of different things. You know, if it's a covert narcissist, they might sort of start spreading little rumors like, oh, you know, I'm so concerned about Tony and his drinking problem. You know, I'm so worried about him. You know, he's just been so stressed lately, just drinking a lot more than he usually does. And, you know, they couch it in terms of care. And, you know, so they make it seem like they're such a good person because they're just worried about the person, you know, and like that. And they might even start dropping these little rumors and seeds in, you know, long before the discard phase even actually happens. And so, you know, and Tony probably doesn't have a drinking problem at all, but they make it seem like, oh my God, I'm so concerned, you know, like that. So it could be like that. Or, you know, it could be creating divisions between people, you know, like, oh, Susie, you know, I don't know that I don't, she said this about this person. I don't know. It seemed like she wasn't really on your side. But you know, it might have been inadvertent what she said, you know, and they make it seem like they're, you know, they're like unwitting in it, or they straight up say, you know, I'm the only one who's on your side, and that person isn't for you. This person's not again. And they create divisions like that. They don't give you a message when they should have. Oh, I don't know, the person didn't call you. That sort of thing. Spreading rumors, gaslighting, distorting reality, strategies to get people to be against each other. The next thing they do is characteristics and tactics. So, this is another way that they line up flying monkeys against you. All right. So again, it's they act out in ignorance, or it might be passive aggression. In this instance, it might be guilt tripping. They might use charm. So it might be, this person, this person left me high and dry. I don't have any money. I can't believe they did this to me. I can't believe they're doing this to their children. How could they ignore their children all weekend? Something like that. They make it seem like, you're a terrible father or a terrible mother. They only tell part of the story, something like that. And that's how they line up their flying monkeys, because they attack your character in some way like that and make it seem like there's something off about you in some way. So, or they make, they use guilt, by they make it seem like you're the victim in some way. They portray themselves as the victim of you in some way. So, or they portray that their children, your children, are the victim of you in some way. So very, very subtle, very excellent at that. They might use parts of emails, parts of text messages, or even manipulated text messages to have the flying monkeys see that. They're excellent at, sort of fashioning stories so that flying monkeys only see what they want the narrative to be seen, so that it's set up so that you look like you're just simply a monster. So that's that. And understanding all of this is so crucial to shutting all of this down. And this is where documentation is going to come into play, and not getting emotional is going to come into play. Okay, because when you start playing into their hands, then when the flying monkeys start to see this, they go, well, I did see some aspects of this, and it's going to feed into that, right? So the impact, I just want to talk a moment about the impact on you as a victim when you become the target of that. It can be really pretty heavy. It can be really very devastating on you and traumatic. And so you can find yourself isolated. You can find yourself alone. You can find yourself feeling overwhelmed. I mean, you can find yourself wanting to give up a lot of times. But this is where you have to say, no, I'm not going to do that. This is where you have to say, they only win if I give in. And this is where you have to say, I can definitely turn this around. And I say, do you want to be right about that, or do you want to actually win this thing? Because let me tell you, they do make mistakes often. And with your documentation, with your
your witnesses, your journaling, your keeping track, you do turn it around because they make mistakes. They lie all the time. And I've worked with countless individuals who have faced this exact situation that you're in. And you have to understand that I know that the emotional scars are deep. Just seeing the patterns of this, get the emotional help that you need, number one. Start setting boundaries, number two, and understand that you have to start looking at them as if they're a third party having a tantrum on the floor, and go, yeah, I can see that you're upset. I can see that you're having, a bad day. Understand it has nothing to do with you. I can, agree with you that we're not going to agree. I can see that, we might have to continue this conversation when you are calm. There's certain things that you are not going to tolerate anymore. You can negotiate, your contracts, your issues, your terms. You're not going to negotiate your self-worth, your self-respect. And so step one, don't run. And that's when you just start to say, line in the sand, it's time now. That invisible shield is coming down. It's Teflon now, and it's everything else is out here. Observe, don't absorb. You're not going to be able to change their behavior. It's hard enough to change your own. You're not going to be able to change their mindset. You're not going to be able to change their minds. You're not going to be able to stop them from doing what they're doing. But you can start showing up as a different, stronger version of yourself. And then, you can potentially change the minds of the witnesses, by the way. And, so get the help and support you need. I have phrases for disarming narcissists, disarmthenarc.com. So go get those. That'll help you a lot. Disarmthenarc.com. Join my free private Facebook group, Narcissist Negotiators with Rebecca Zung. That will help you too. Get the help and support that you need. Make sure that you have a good support system, because that is definitely going to help you as well. And I want to hear from you. I want to hear what experiences you guys have had with this. Share your experiences in the comments below. Have you dealt with flying monkeys at all in your life? Give me a yes in the comments if you've dealt with them, and then tell me what some of the experiences are that you've dealt with in the comments below as well. Have you ever met somebody, they started off to be the most charming, charismatic person you've ever met in your life, then they turned out to be your worst nightmare, and then when you go to negotiate with them, they're a living hell? Well, I developed something called the SLAY method of negotiating with narcissists, and it has helped tens of thousands of people in more than 150 countries win, go from feeling drained and defeated to getting the outcomes they want. And the reason why it works is because I spent more than 20 years studying narcissism as a trial attorney, and now I'm here to help you win too, and also take your suffering and turn it into your superpower. Take your pain and turn it into profit, peace, and purpose as a highly specialized, high conflict negotiation coach. If you want to learn how to do it, then just go to RebeccaZung.com/apply, and I will show you how. Now, if you're dealing with that pesky narcissist who's probably quite the pain in the neck in your life, then here's what you need to be looking for, because anybody who either has narcissistic personality disorder or just narcissistic traits or tendencies, they tend to employ the same types of tricks to try to manipulate people into controlling them. It really doesn't matter if they are a covert narcissist or an overt narcissist, they still use the same kinds of tricks. So here are the things that you should be looking for. So number one is shaming and belittling. This is a very, very classic narcissistic trait, because remember that narcissists inside are actually the most insecure. They have absolutely no self-esteem. So they look for it all externally. And so they're looking for people to, of course, make them look good and tell them how wonderful they are.
But in that process, they also need to try to make everybody else look worse because they feel like that that's the only way that they're going to end up looking better. So they shame you, they belittle you, they do it both in public and in private. And sometimes they'll do it under the guise of, oh, I'm only joking, or can't you take a joke, or I'm just trying to help you. They use these hurtful words, and you rely on the fact that maybe one day you will be good enough. But trust me, you are already good enough. Number two thing that they do is try to gather a team. They gather a team against you. It's also called triangulation. And here is where they're going to try to go to the people that they especially think that you think a lot of, or that you might go to for your own advice or help. And they immediately try to get that person on their side. So they try to make themselves look good. They try to make you look bad. They try to gather this whole army of people to make it seem like the whole world is against you. And therefore, if you go against this narcissist, then you're really torpedoing yourself, because all these people are going to think badly of you too, because all these people love this particular person. So triangulation, or trying to gather people against you, is a very typical thing that narcissists do. So the third thing that narcissists do is they try to minimize or undervalue you. And this can often be very, very confusing, because what narcissists typically do is they start off telling you how amazing you are, how wonderful you are, how beautiful you are, how smart you are, how gorgeous you are, how handsome you are, whatever. And so you're sucked in to this, feeling that this person thinks that you're the most amazing thing that ever walked the earth. And so what happens is you're constantly trying to find that place again. Like, how did I have that? How can I get back to that? Because what happens is the relationship starts to erode, and they start to belittle you. They start to say, it looks like you're putting on weight, or maybe you're not that smart, or, they just start to undervalue you. So like, let's say you've done a lot for that person, and they'll minimize your contributions or the things that you've done, that make it seem like it's not that big of a deal, or they could have done it themselves, something like that. So it just never feels like you can catch back up to whoever that person was that loved you or thought you were amazing back in the beginning. Are you recognizing these traits so far? If you are, give me an amen in the comments. Okay, so the fourth thing that they do is they try to play the victim. And this can also feel confusing, because they start off seeming like so strong and that they can really take care of themselves, but then they'll start to say things to make it seem like you're doing something to them. Like, see, I can never get through to you. You never understand me, things like that. And this is especially something that covert narcissists do. And I have a whole video on covert narcissism in relationships, and I will post a link to that below. You're definitely going to want to check that out if you think that you're dealing with a covert narcissist. But remember that playing the victim, they're always sicker than you. They always have more on them than you do. They're always put upon. And oftentimes you're the one who's doing it, or it's your fault for not doing enough or doing too much or whatever. But they are always the victim in whatever it is. Okay, the fifth thing that they do is gaslighting. And what gaslighting is, if you don't know, I know this is one of those terms that gets thrown around quite a lot, is that they say things or do things to make you think that you were crazy. So as I explained in my video on covert narcissism, it came from a movie, and the husband was blowing out these gaslights, and the wife would say, oh, wasn't that lamp just lit? And he would say, no, it wasn't. And so he was trying to make her crazy. So that's where the term comes from. And so what narcissists will do is they'll say things to you like, oh, we discussed that and you agreed. Or we had that conversation. I'm sorry, there must have been a misunderstanding on your part. and you know that there was never a misunderstanding or you didn't have that conversation. But sometimes when people are saying that to you over and over again so many times, you really do start to question your own sanity, which is exactly what they want you to do, because the narcissist wants you to be fully reliant on that person for your self-worth, for your self-esteem, for everything, so that they have total control over you. Okay, the sixth thing that they do is controlling behavior. So, if you're in a relationship with this person, they usually want to be the one to pay the bills, or they want to control all of the aspects of everything, how things look in your home, how the bookshelves are organized, just really everything. They might want to control what you wear, something like that, or who you're seeing, everything about you. And the reason why they do that is going back to the gaslighting conversation, and that is that they want total control over you and over everything that you're doing, so that you are completely reliant on them for all of your needs and all of your self-esteem, which of course they're going to strip from you. And so you end up feeling like you're losing yourself in these relationships. And the last thing they do, and remember, this is just a menu of the main things they do. There may be others, but these are the main things that narcissists do to try to manipulate people. The last thing, number 7, is the project and deflect. So, in other words, basically, they're going to blame you for all of their own behavior, because they have to remain flawless and they're never wrong. So, if you ended up going the wrong way in the car, then it's definitely your fault. If too much money was spent that month, then that was your fault too. Or if you're working with this person and a project didn't get done on time, then that was your fault. Even if it was their fault because they didn't give it to you on time or whatever, they'll never see that. Narcissists generally don't apologize, and they never take responsibility for their actions. So they're going to project it onto you so that you can be the one that's the target, and you're the problem, and you're the one that's triggering their anger. And it's honestly, it's like a black hole that you will never fill, because you're always going to be the problem, and they're always going to have problems. So you're constantly trying to catch up to fix things that are never going to be fixed. There's never going to be an end to what needs to be fixed, or in you or for them. So if you are dealing with a narcissist, first of all, I'm sorry. I've been there too. It totally sucks. And the thing that I really need to tell you, and I've dealt with them in my own personal life, in business and in other areas, and also as an attorney, I've represented them, I've had them on the other side. So I understand this personality very, very well. And the thing that I have to tell you is you have to take appropriate measures to try to get them out of your life, because it's going to start affecting your health, not only your mental health, but your physical health as well. I mean, it's so difficult to get over having this person in your life. It's almost like having PTSD. So, I mean, your cortisol levels go up, you get ulcers, heart attacks, all kinds of things can happen to you. So you've got to start figuring out a way to get this person out of your life. So, whether it's going to be physical barriers, whether it's a divorce, whether it's, find a different job, or whatever it is that you need to do. But I would try to work this person out of your life, whether it's distant, maybe you limit the communication in a certain way. Maybe you create barriers that you need to in order to protect yourself. But do what you need to do to protect yourself from this person. What is a covert narcissist to begin with? A covert narcissist is very much a narcissist. It's just that they're better at hiding it in a lot of ways. A grandiose narcissist is the type that most people think of when they think of a narcissist. That's the type that kind of is the one that goes around bragging about things. They tell everybody in a way that they're a narcissist because they're just out there with it. They're demanding. They're bragging. They're the one that tends to be more of the male chauvinist. They're the one that I kind of thought of as a narcissist to begin with. But a covert narcissist they can be humble. They can play the victim. They can act like, oh my gosh, poor me. They can be downtrodden. But really, everybody else thinks that they're so good. They think things are so nice. They can be humanitarians. But just underneath the surface is this jealousy, this rage, this envy. And so the way it comes out is different than other narcissists. So they still feel that sense of emptiness inside. They still need an endless amount of narcissistic supply, just the same as any type of narcissist does, but the way they go about it is different. They are passive aggressive. As a lawyer, there's a term called clean hands, right? And I kind of think of them as the clean hands version of narcissists because they always try to keep their hands clean. So there's always this plausible deniability going on with them. They're the ones that are kind of clutching their pearls. What? Little old man. That's the covert narcissist. They're the ones that might be acting like they are smearing people, or they're smearing people, but acting like they're doing it in terms of care. So it's, oh my goodness, I'm so concerned about so and so and how late she's been to work so often. Just I'm just really worried about her just because, she's normally so punctual and she's usually so conscientious. And I just am worried about how often she's been missing lately because that's just not her. And of course, this is a person who is probably vying for that particular job. And so she just wants to, point out that this person isn't showing up all the time or whatever it is. And maybe this person only missed once or twice. And maybe she knows exactly what's going on or whatever it is. And maybe she didn't even go to the person and say, hey, what's going on? Or whatever it is. Or maybe the boss already knows what's happening or whatever it is. But they're just taking it upon themselves to insert themselves in the situation. Or maybe they're just kind of letting other people know what's happening so that the rumor sort of spreads around, that sort of thing. Or they might put it in terms of guilt. They might be guilting you. It's all about plausible deniability with them. It's all about death by 1,000 cuts. So that's their number one form. Their number one form is that subtle emotional manipulation, but almost like they're playing a game of chess, right? It's that cutting, that subtle little cutting. You just kind of know that it's happening and you can't quite put your finger on it either, but you know that something is happening. And even when you go to tell somebody about it, they go, well, doesn't seem so bad, or oh, that must have been inadvertent. Because they're just so nice, or they're just such a good person. They're doing it to manipulate some situation behind the scenes for some other third party, or there's always some kind of something driving it behind the scenes. It's not just because they deeply care about the person with cancer. There's just some agenda that they're pushing. You can't ever quite get back to them on it. It's really hard to quite push it back to them. There's always a way for them to sort of fashion it back to what in the world how could you have a problem with me caring about a person with cancer? Whereas a person who is a malignant narcissist, if they're stalking somebody, you can go right back and go, that person was stalking. And it's really clear. That line of abuse is really clear. Right there it is. Same thing with a grandiose narcissist who ignored a court order. Boom, right there it is. The line of bad behavior, boom, right there it is. With a covert passive aggressive narcissist, The line is so much finer. It's so much more difficult. So what can you do? Well, the first thing that you can do is what I say, step one, don't run. Step one, don't run. You make your boundary. You make your boundary. You know that something is going on. You know that it ain't right. So you put that invisible boundary down around you and you go, it ain't right. I'm not doing this anymore. This does not add up for me, and I'm not taking this anymore. And plus, the person is probably taking advantage of you. You know that you are doing more than your share or whatever it is. You know you're probably carrying more of your weight. They're not acknowledging you. They're not seeing your side. They're probably using guilt to manipulate you. Don't allow it anymore. You need to put that boundary down. So I want you to put in the comments, I can do this. I can do this. Boundary. All right. That's the first thing. And then the next thing is you always have a right to respect. So don't allow them to treat you with disrespect, because once you start to create these boundaries, you're going to see that mask whip off. You are going to see it, because they are every bit as much of a narcissist as every other narcissist. So once you start to create these boundaries, once you start to do this, you're going to start to see them ramp up. You're going to start to see them getting angrier. You're going to start to see this smear campaign ramp up. You're going to start to see them becoming more and more hostile. Okay. So I want you to say, I can do this. I want you to stand your ground. So get my free phrases for disarming narcissists at disarmthenarc.com. All right. So I want you to do that. I want you to join my free private Facebook group at Narcissist Negotiators with Rebecca Zung. Also very important for you to do, because you are going to need some support. Right. So that is going to be very, very important for you as well. So step one, don't run. Step two, make that U-turn. The next thing I want you to do is just start looking at them as if they are a toddler having a tantrum on the floor, and just say things to them like, I can see that you are upset. I can see that you are angry. I can see that we may not agree to things. Keep your boundaries. Don't allow yourself to get emotional. Don't allow yourself to be sucked into their drama. Don't get pulled in, sucked in, dragged back in, right? As soon as you do, then they know that they have you. And then I want you to start documenting everything. In that documentation, that's when you're going to start to be able to create your leverage. And they will lie and they will make mistakes. I promise you that that is where you will be able to start catching them. You will be able to start to catch them, and it will start to be able to come out. Those are the first few things that you will be able to do, and it will start to come to the fore. You will be able to start getting to a place where you will be able to expose them. It will take a little time. It's simple. It's not necessarily easy, but it is very simple to do. I promise you, I've helped literally thousands of people around the world win. You can win too. It's extremely, extremely easy to do.
Let's talk about what coercive control is when it comes to narcissism. The thing that you have to do is understand where it comes from before we can even really understand what coercive control is and why they do it. So narcissists have no inner sense of value. Something happened with them when they were back in their childhood, and they came to a conclusion that the world is a bad place. They came to a conclusion that they have no sense of value, that there's something maybe innately wrong with them, or something innately broken. And it could have been anything. It could have been a trauma that happened to them. It could have been abuse that happened to them. I've even read some things that have said that children who are overindulged too much, they feel like their parents didn't care enough about them to discipline them, to give them boundaries. You know, children need boundaries. They need guidelines. They need structure to feel secure. And without that, they sometimes end up feeling like they have no inner sense of value. So who knows how it happened, but what happened is that at some point they drew the conclusion that they didn't have value to them. So they ended up feeling like they needed to get value from the outside world in some way. So they're trying to layer it on, they kind of slather it on this narcissistic supply, but underneath, you know, it's still a feeling of emptiness, of worthlessness, and all of that. And no, empaths, you can't fix it. You can't make them better. They just end up sucking you into their poisonous vortex, and you just end up trying to get out. When people are leaving a narcissist, they don't just walk away nicely. You know, they run with their hair on fire trying to get away from these people because it's terrible. So you can't fix them, but they have this sense of emptiness inside of them. And so they draw this conclusion that they need to take control of the world by, you know, controlling everything around it, because without that sense of control, they feel like they're not being seen. They feel like they don't exist in the world. So coercive control is actually a form of narcissistic supply. And that supply is anything that feeds that narcissist's ego. So it could be, you know, anything that feeds a narcissist's ego. It could be money, compliments, or, you know, prestige or whatever. But most of the time what you see with narcissists is where they are actually trying to control a person, or they're devaluing them, or they're manipulating them, or intimidating, you know, all of those kinds of sort of the dark side of narcissism. Those are the kinds of things that you often see with narcissists. And if you've seen that dark side of a narcissist, give me an "I've seen it" in the comments. So when a narcissist feels insecure, which is all the time, they try to exert control over other people in order to kind of control their environment. So it's a type of control that they put over a person that ends up manifesting itself in all sorts of ways. You know, they actually start to, you know, maybe want to know where you are at all times. Maybe they look at your phone. Maybe they control how you dress, what you wear, who you see, when you see them, what kind of car you drive, when you drive your car. I actually saw a situation one time where the husband would actually, you know, check the mileage on the car before he would leave for work and see, you know, if the wife drove anywhere at the end of the day. And if she did, where did she go? You know, they might put car trackers on you. They might track your phone. They might have some sort of software that tracks what your emails are, what your text messaging is, things like that. I mean, it can get really, really malignant and poisonous, where they're looking to control every aspect of your life. What you think, what you say, how you breathe, almost everything. And then while they're doing this, they're probably devaluing you and treating you poorly, also while they're love bombing you and all the other things. But it's a form of controlling you that can go really, really deep and really, really far. But what they're trying to do is make sure that all of your world is about them. Every single thing. I mean, they might even be like, if you look at, happen to, you know, inadvertently look up and see a person, they might say, oh, you want that person. You know, they don't even want you looking at other people. They don't want you talking to other people. Sometimes it can get really, really advanced like that. So it can be kind of scary sometimes when they get really deep into this type of coercive control. But it's a form of narcissistic supply. It gives them supply to know that they have control. It feeds their ego, and And if you want to know more about Narcissistic Supply, check out my video on Narcissistic Supply. It goes much deeper into what you need to know about Narcissistic Supply. In a divorce setting, how I see coercive control manifesting itself is when somebody chooses a lawyer, and they really don't want you to have a lawyer, because that now this is another person who might exert control over you, another person who you might listen to, another person who's going to be advising you, and you might be taking that person's opinion or advice over theirs, which of course you should definitely be listening to your lawyer if you have one. So, but what they'll start to do in this particular situation is they'll start to try to devalue your lawyer to you. So, they'll come up to you and they'll say, your lawyer is a bad lawyer, or your lawyer is too busy, or your lawyer is just in it for the money, or they just start to badmouth your lawyer in some way, because they're realizing that they're losing control over you. And if you want to know more about what happens when a narcissist is starting to lose control, or what the signs are, make sure you check out my video on signs that a narcissist is losing control. But in a divorce setting, anybody who's going to start to try to have control over you, or that they perceived is going to have now control over you instead of them, is going to become the enemy. So they're going to start targeting those people so that you stay into their web of control, even as you're on the way out. Even if they are divorcing you, even if they're the ones leaving you, you start to see that happening. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. We often talk about red flags we should avoid, but what if we focus more on green flags in friends and partners, whether you're dating, married, building a friendship, or just working on yourself from time to time? So how about we work on the relationships that are gonna love you back, including yourself? I know for me, therapy's been absolutely game-changing, and learning how to love myself, set boundaries, and overcome all sorts of blocks I didn't even realize I was creating for myself. I just knew I wanted to be the best version of myself that I could be. What I love about BetterHelp is that they make therapy totally accessible and convenient. The network is totally diverse, more than 30,000 credentialed therapists with a wide range of specialties. Plus, if you don't gel with one, you can just easily switch therapists anytime at no extra cost. Discover your relationship green flags with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/negotiate today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/negotiate. Now let's talk about breadcrumbing. You've heard of the term gaslighting. Maybe you've heard of the term flying monkeys. Maybe you've heard of all of these different terms, probably way more about narcissists than you ever wanted to learn. But there's another term out there, and it's called breadcrumbing. And it's kind of really a form of future faking. And if you want to know more about future faking, check out my video on future faking, and you'll learn way more about that. But basically, in a nutshell, what future faking is you are leading the person to believe that they're going to have a future that is different than what has been in the past. And so future faking, when you're already in a relationship with a narcissist, is you've called them out on their behavior, and you've said, here's what I see, that you've done or not done. You promised that you would do this, but you didn't. And so what future faking is the narcissist will then turn around and say, okay, let's just forget about that. Here's what it's going to look like in the future. I'm going to be better. I'm going to do all the things that I said that, that you want me to do now. And they paint this picture. It's kind of a form of love bombing in a way that, just makes it look like the way life is going to be going forward is going to be so much better and so much different than the way life has been so far, or the things that have happened so far in the past. So just move forward, let's forget about it. And it's a way to kind of quiet you, silence you, get them off your back, get you to not look at whatever it was that you were upset with them about. So that's future faking. So breadcrumbing is kind of, in a way, a form of future faking, but in breadcrumbing, what you are dealing with is you're just starting the relationship with this person, or you think you're starting a relationship with this person. And so they give you enough, either through social media or texting or something like that, that makes you think they're interested in you. And so, you know, they might say how beautiful you are, or how handsome you looked, or something like that. And you start to believe that there's a possibility of a long-term relationship. And even, they might even get into a relationship with you, but it just feels like it's not really going anywhere. But they give you just enough to make you feel like something is going to happen. And so they kind of future fake with you. Oh, I can't wait to see you soon. You know, we're going to spend the weekend together, something like that. And it could even be in a business relationship too, by the way, where they say, you know, we're going to do great things together, or I'm going to have you on my show, or, you know, I can promise to deliver this particular client to you. And they tell you just enough to keep you interested and keep you going. So they're throwing out these little breadcrumbs to you to keep you on the hook. It's basically leading you on. It's a form of leading you on, a very narcissistic manipulation tactic that they use to get people, you know, into their lair, their web of control, their little narcissist kingdom, is the way I kind of think of it in my mind. And the reason they do that is because they want to have as much supply as possible. They need to have as much supply as possible. So if they can get as many people lined up, interested in them, then they get narcissistic supply from that. And if you want to know more about narcissistic supply, check out my video on narcissistic supply. It's basically anything that feeds their ego. They get a rush from the fact that they're controlling you. And they really love to get a rush from the fact that not only are they controlling you, but they're not even giving you what you want, which gives them another form of rush. So they're, you know, they've got these people that are hanging on their every word and hoping to be with them, but not getting that. And that just feeds their ego, and it gives them that narcissistic supply. So some red flags of breadcrumbing are they are making plans, but they never seem to come to fruition. Or you seem to be much more interested in making plans than they are. So you're constantly trying to go back to them and get them to respond to you. And it always seems to be you initiating that conversation. And if you've seen this behavior and you think it is so wrong, give me a so wrong in the comments. Now, another red flag that you might see is that they seem super warm, but then they turn super cold. And then they act like, oh, why are you hounding me? And what are you bugging me for? Or maybe they just ghost you completely. They just stop talking to you completely because, you know, now they think that you're acting like you're so desperate, even though they were the ones that led you on. You know, like they might even say, you know, we're going to go do something next weekend. And then you go to bring up, you know, what are we doing next weekend? And they think, oh, well, they say, we're not doing anything next weekend. Or they say, oh, you know, maybe it's Friday and you were planning to do something that weekend. And now suddenly it's, you know, we can go, you know, maybe grab lunch on Sunday instead of actually spending the entire weekend together. And then when it comes time for lunch on Sunday, now all of a sudden they can't make lunch. they're sick or they have other plans or something happened, and they're constantly breaking their plans with you, and then they act like, oh, what's wrong with you for trying to push on this, and you need to give them some space. So that is probably another really huge red flag. I mean, yes, people have to cancel plans every once in a while, but if you keep seeing a pattern like that, it could be a really big red flag for you that you're being breadcrumbed.
And today we are diving into a topic that is near and dear to my heart, negotiating your best life. It's the name of my podcast. It's the what I live and breathe, because sometimes I really feel like the very first negotiation that you have to do is with your own self, with your own mind, for your own self-worth in the morning. When you wake up in the morning, we all sometimes feel like life isn't fair and you don't get the life that you deserve, and you feel like you get taken advantage of. And it's time to stand in your authentic power, reclaim your power, set boundaries, and negotiate for the life that you deserve. So stick around if that describes you. This is going to be a transformative ride. If you've ever felt like you're constantly being taken advantage of, whether it's in your personal relationships, your personal life, you're not alone. Maybe it's your professional life. I know I have. And I've been a lawyer for a really long time, and I teach people how to negotiate, and it still happens to me sometimes, especially I think as women, but even if you're a guy and you're watching this, it happens because, you feel like you want to be the good person, you want to be the nice person. You sometimes think, you know what? Do I speak up? Do I not? Did that just actually happen to me? It happens. So I want to explore some practical strategies that you can employ to put an end to this pattern so that you can keep yourself empowered and stay in control of your life, not have these leaky boundaries. I call leaky boundaries, right? I want to make sure that you have power in your hands. All right. So the first step in stopping being taken advantage of, step number one, is recognizing the signs that you might be taken advantage of. So let's walk through some common behaviors that are situations where manipulation is often occurring, from subtle guilt trips to overt exploitation. Understanding these signs is critical in breaking free from the cycle. Let's look at some real life signs that are crystal clear. First of all, somebody is trying to make you feel guilty. It's Thanksgiving. You decide you want to go to somebody else's house on Thanksgiving, and a person is saying, no, oh, I'm going to be all alone, and I guess I'll just be here by myself. That is a sign of manipulation. That is a sign that somebody's trying to make you feel guilty. You need to do what you need to do for yourself. But even in a professional situation, I just literally had a conversation with one of my dearest friends. She owns a business. One of her employees was saying, how come you're not giving me more of a raise? This person just literally got a 20% raise last year. This person was saying to her, you don't value me. Obviously, you don't think highly enough of me, trying to lay on the guilt trip. This person who I was talking to owns this company and was being made to feel guilty by this employee. That is something where she was going to be being taken advantage of because this employee is trying to make her feel guilty using guilt. I was saying to her, use a rubric. This is what it is to get a raise. You don't collapse whether or not I like you, whether or not I value you. I mean, I remember I had a situation where I had an employee who was saying the same kinds of things to me. Well, I have to use all my PTO because, my kids are sick. That's not really fair because nobody else has kids. And so they get to use their PTO for vacations. How is that my problem? Somebody is trying to make you feel guilty for something. That is a sign of manipulation. To overt exploitation, somebody's actually just using you. Somebody's literally just every single time you're around them, they are having you give them rides or having you do something for them, and there's nothing in return. My husband and I started to realize that we had some friends that every single time we were around them, they were inviting themselves over to our house. They were inviting themselves to join birthday celebrations or whatever. They were never inviting themselves or inviting us over to their house. We've literally never even seen the inside of where they live. It's just a strange situation. It's just a using kind of overt exploitation situation. Where does manipulation occur? What's a using situation? How do you break that cycle? So those are some real life examples of where you might be being used. Those are sort of innocuous in some ways, but there can be some very much more toxic situations where you can actually be being manipulated and used in a much more toxic way. Somebody's making you spend money, somebody's making you pay for a lot of things, or even much more deep than that. Before we move forward, I want to engage with you, my incredible community. You guys, drop a comment below sharing any experiences you guys have had where you might feel like you've been taken advantage of, and let's create a supportive space for each other. Okay, I want you to check out my link below for some phrases to help you disarm narcissists. You can get that at disarmthenarc.com. You can use it almost like a toolkit to help you disarm narcissists. If you're dealing with a narcissist and you don't know what to say in emails and text messages, or even if you're having a conversation with a narcissist, you can use that to help you navigate conversations with narcissists. All right, so let's dive deeper into strategies to stop being taken advantage of with narcissists. The next thing that you can do is set boundaries. What I basically say to do is put a invisible shield down around you, and you just basically take these baby steps. I say step 1, don't run. Step 2, make a U-turn. Step 3, break free. Because you're basically course correcting. You have to kind of almost turn the ship around 180 degrees, right? And so the first thing you do when you're setting a boundary is that step 1, don't run. And you're saying, I am no longer going to be retreating. I'm going to stay in place, and I'm putting this invisible shield down around me. I'm going to start looking at you as if you are a toddler having a tantrum on the floor. And I'm going to start observing your behavior to you. Just say, I can see that you're upset. I say, pretend like you're reporting the news. And then I say, never jade, even though I love jade. I say, never jade. You know what jade stands for? Never justify, argue, defend, or explain. So you're just going to pretend like you're reporting the news, and you just observe their behavior to them. Just the facts. So you can just say, no, I can see that you're upset. I can see that you're angry, but we can have this conversation later. Or you can say things like, this approach is not working for me. You're just setting boundaries. Setting boundaries is a really, really powerful tool in breaking the cycle of being taken advantage of. I just think it's really, really important for you to start healing, for you to start saying, I'm taking control. It's all also like a mental thing. Like you are mentally making a choice to say, this is a line in the sand. This is today I am making a decision that this is no longer going to be the way it was yesterday. And your boundaries are your fortress. It's you transforming your relationship with this person and with yourself, and you reclaiming your power. That boundary remains strong. And the next thing is the art of saying no. No is a really beautiful skill, and it can change your life. And really get comfortable with, it's okay if somebody is upset, because it really has nothing to do with you. Somebody else's triggers are not your responsibility. It's on them. Not everybody's going to like you. That's okay. What happens is we think that we don't want people to be mad at us, or we don't want people to be upset or whatever. But what happens is it's either going to be that we're going to be resentful and upset and angry with ourselves, or we think that we are delaying something. It doesn't end up well. It never ends up well when we try to go along to get along. It just doesn't. It always ends up worse in the long run. It just does. It's really better to just address it right away. Just get into the habit of the art of saying no. Not everybody's going to like you anyway. Your people are your people. Stop trying to make not your people your people. Learn the art of saying no. That skill will change your life, and be confident in it. Be confident in the art of saying no. It's not rejection, it's a declaration of self-worth. Embrace it, and it will transform your interactions. The next one is negotiating for fairness. Negotiation is a powerful tool, and it stops you from being taken advantage of. You just say, you know what? You're stepping into what you want. You do it in integrity, and you say, this is what I want. And you do it from a place of being really agnostic. You hold people to your word, you hold people to their word, and you say, this is what we agreed upon. And then after you have a verbal agreement, make sure you always follow it up with, even if it's a text message or an email or whatever, here's what we discussed. Here's what we agreed upon. I am confirming this conversation. Please confirm that this is what we agreed on, and get them to say, yes, this is what we agreed on. That way you have it in writing, because you want to make sure that there is something that says this is what was spoken about. It's a powerful tool from stopping others from taking advantage of you. I'm going to give you 6 tactics, six simple ways to shut narcissists down so that you can stop having to deal with them. Finally, defend yourself against that crazy narcissistic manipulation. So, number 1 is know the type of narcissist that you are dealing with. Are you dealing with a covert narcissist? Are you dealing with a grandiose narcissist? Are you dealing with a malignant narcissist? So this is where you have to do some education. You have to do some research, learn about this. This is why you're here, right? This is, the very first step in figuring all of this out is starting to realize, hey, it's not you. It's not something that is wrong with you, and not taking it personally. One of my very favorite books on the planet is The 4 Agreements. I absolutely love this book. And it's a very simple book. It's a book that you can read in an afternoon. It's really small, and it's 4 agreements that you keep with yourself. And one of the agreements is never to take anything personally, because the way people treat other people is a direct reflection of the way they feel about themselves, good or bad, right? And that means that if people feel good about themselves, they treat people well. And if they feel bad about themselves, then they treat people poorly. And deep down, narcissists don't feel good about themselves. They hate themselves deep down inside. And that's why they treat people poorly. So, you can't take anything that they do personally. And that's why, the very first layer of this is education. And that's what you're doing now. And you're realizing, hey, it's not you, it's them. And so you're going to realize, okay, number 1, I'm dealing with a narcissist. Number 2, what kind of narcissist am I dealing with? So determine the type of narcissist that you are dealing with. And I have videos on all of this. So if you're, trying to figure out, is it a covert? Is it a grandiose? Is it a malignant? Go and check out my videos on all of those things and try to figure out, what kind of narcissist is it that you're dealing with? Okay, so that's number 1. Number 2 is be aware of the tactics that they use. All right. And this is all part of my SLAY methodology, by the way. When you're developing a strategy, when you're developing your leverage, when you're anticipating what they're going to do and being 2 steps ahead of them and focusing on you and your offensive strategy and your mindset, the very first piece is strategy. And in developing your strategy, you've got to know what kind of narcissist it is that you're dealing with, figuring out what tactics to use, right? So be aware of the tactics that each one of them uses. Coverts act differently than grandiose narcissists, and they act differently than malignant narcissists. Each one is slightly different because covert narcissists want to be under the radar. They want to look like they're the victim, right? They present differently than a grandiose narcissist. Malignants are, in a way, kind of like not the smartest ones because they're the ones that'll be out there stalking you and, being violent. And, in a way, that's not the smartest thing to do. The coverts are the ones that'll be like, oh my goodness, I'm the humanitarian. I will take care of everybody. But under the radar, they're the ones that are death by 1,000 cuts. I mean, I think they're the stealthiest and in some ways the smartest of all of them because everyone else will think that they're a victim and you know darn well that they're not. So I think coverts are the worst ones. Anyway, I digress. Be aware of the tactics they use. That's number 2. Number 3, distance yourself from that narcissist. Distance yourself, create boundaries. They've been conditioning you from that beginning. You've got to start distancing yourself. You've got to start creating boundaries. You've got to start saying, I'm drawing a line in the sand. And I'm no longer taking this. I'm now saying you have to treat me with respect. And I'm now saying there's a new game in town. I always say step 1, don't run. Step 2, make a U-turn. Step 3, break free, right? In order for you to shift that dynamic and turn things around, you have to start with distancing yourself and creating boundaries. It's never going to change unless you make a change. You keep doing what you're doing, you're going to keep getting what you're getting, right? That whole definition of insanity. So you've got to distance yourself. You've got to put boundaries in place. You've got to start making a change. So that's number 3. Number 4, start documenting everything, recording everything, writing things down. If it's an email, you're saving. If it's a text, you can screenshot it. If it's voicemail, make sure you save it. Do not delete. Everything gets saved. Everything gets documented. If they are late for something, you write it down. Make sure that you are keeping track of absolutely everything. They will make mistakes. They will trip up. They will lie. They will give you plenty of ammunition, but you've got to make sure that you have kept track of it and start organizing it because that's how you're going to get them. My SLAY program will show you how to do that. You've got to start getting yourself prepared for it. And you can do this. And I want you to put that in the comments. I can do this. All right. But you absolutely have to get started. That's number 4. Number 5 is do not engage. Do not engage with them because they're going to try to bait you. Engage with them as minimally as you absolutely have to. Very, very brief, very, very brief interactions or as minimally as possible because emotionally they're going to try to bait you. They know that's your Achilles heel. They're going to say whatever they absolutely can. If it's something with the kids, whatever they know is your emotional Achilles heel, they're going right for that. So if you're a deadbeat dad, you're a horrible mom, you're terrible at your job, you suck at this, whatever it is, so that they can get you to respond, get you to be defensive, that's where they're going to go, because they know that you'll respond then. So don't take the bait. Don't go there. Don't allow them to get you into that space, because then you will be both sucked in. They're going to take you into that quicksand. Don't allow it. And then finally, the last one is set personal limits. Decide for yourself what your limits are going to be with them, and then do not cross those. I always say with negotiation, what's negotiable? Issues are negotiable. Terms in a contract are negotiable. What's not negotiable? Your self-esteem, your self-respect. Those things are not negotiable. They're never negotiable. And so when they start to make it personal, when they start to say things to you that are personal, putting you down, speaking to you in a manner that's not respectful, yelling at you, being denigrating, you do not have to stay there. You don't have to have a conversation. You have the right to say, I'm terminating this conversation until we can cool it down, until it can be a one that can be respectful on both sides. You absolutely have the right to do that. Those are 6 simple ways to shut them down, to defend yourself against narcissistic manipulation of any kind, no matter where you are in a relationship with a narcissist, whether it's your mother, father, sister, brother, neighbor, friend, coworker, boss, whoever it is. You have the right to have self-respect as a human being in a relationship with a narcissist, period. End of story. Zero tolerance policy.